Hello, and welcome to this T-Level Tactics video for the T-Level Digital Support Services course. We're still looking at Root Core 1 business context, and we're on to our 9th topic, which is change management. And if you've been following along with all the videos up to now, we're roughly about halfway through this unit. And in this video, we're going to take a look at what change management is and why it's needed. We're going to outline some potential catalysts of change, and explain ways that businesses might respond to that change. Before we get started, just to note that these videos are not endorsed or sponsored by any education institution or qualification awarding body, and these videos should not be used as a replacement to any classroom learning you might be receiving. The discussion and practical activities in class with your peers and lecturer are going to help to expand your thinking and comprehension. Instead, these materials are best used as preparation material or revision to reinforce your learning. And if you're studying the T-Level Digital Business Services course, this content is going to work for you as well, but it is more contextualized towards IT support roles. Let's move on to our first topic. So what is change management? Let's take a look at a couple of different definitions. This first definition is from IBM, who, if you're not familiar with this business, you need to go and look them up. But IBM say that change management is the method by which an organization communicates and implements change. This includes a structured approach to managing people and processes through organizational change. Okay, good start. Let's take a look at the ITIL definition, and you should be more familiar with ITIL now as we've looked at it a couple of times in previous videos. And if we look at the ITIL 4 Foundation book, in there it says that change management ensures that changes in an organization are smoothly and successfully implemented, and that lasting benefits are achieved by managing the human aspects of the changes. So, change management. It's about having a structured plan to help individuals, teams, and organizations shift to a new process or way of working. And it requires planning, implementing, and monitoring changes to ensure a successful transition, adoption, and realization of the benefits. So why do we need it? Well, I mentioned before that people don't really like change. They don't like having to do things differently. We like routines, and if we've done a job a particular way for a long time, we don't necessarily like being pulled out of that way of working and, well, having to take the time and effort to learn a new one. So, some key reasons for change management. First of all, it's about managing that resistance and minimizing any disruption to people's existing ways of working. With change management, we're looking to enhance employee engagement in an organization and also allow the organization to adapt to external factors and influences, ensuring that any changes that we have, we can successfully implement them and maximize the benefits from them. There's no specific method to guarantee successful change. There's always a chance that something could go wrong, or perhaps the change that we're implementing hasn't quite been right for the organization. But there are some models that can provide examples of how it can work. There's Kotter's 8-step change model, the ADKAR model, Lewin's change management model, and there's many more. If you're a Patreon member, the first task is all about models, so I suggest that you head over to the Patreon page, download the task sheet from there, and have a go at that first task. It's only a short one, it should only take you about 10 minutes. Pause the video here, have a go at that, then come back and we'll move on to part 2. Okay, let's have a look at some catalysts for change. Think back to video 4 when we looked at the factors that influence organizations and businesses. And in the last video, which was creating value, we looked at the ITIL 4 dimensions that also looked at some different factors and influences. You'll notice some links with what we're about to look at when we look at internal catalysts and some external catalysts as well. Let's start with internal catalysts. We'll look at restructuring, expansion, downsizing, and strategic objectives. Restructuring is when a business might need to realign resources, improve efficiency, or respond to changes in market dynamics, customer demand, or internal operations. Things like mergers, acquisitions, changes in leadership, the introduction of new technology, or shifts in business priorities can trigger restructuring efforts. Restructuring will generally aim to optimize organizational structures, departments, staff, processes, and functions in order to enhance the agility, innovation, and overall performance of the business. Involved in restructuring, there might be redundancies, the reallocation of staff, recruitment, or the reskilling of existing staff in order to meet priorities. With expansion, this could be where a business is trying to capitalize on new opportunities, to enter new markets, or diversify their product and service offerings. Market demand, technological advancements, competitive pressures, or strategic goals can fuel expansion and growth strategies in a business. And it will often require organizations to scale their operations, investing in new resources and adapting structures to support increased capacity and market presence. Downsizing is very much the opposite. It's where a business is going to look to reduce costs, improve efficiency, or restructuring their operations in response to changing market conditions or financial constraints. It could be that new technologies may make certain roles redundant, or staff reallocated and reskilled. Think about the impact that AI is having. Only today I've seen an article where voice actors in the video game industry are worried for their job roles because AI has become good enough to potentially replace them and create artificially generated voices. Well, what are these people going to do? Will they have another role in the development of game? Will they have to reskill and potentially find something else to do? There could be other factors, such as economic downturns, technological disruptions, organizational inefficiencies, or strategic shifts that can lead to downsizing decisions within organizations. Our final internal catalyst is new strategic objectives. This could be the setting of new goals, priorities, or a direction for the organization to achieve sustainable growth and competitive advantage. Factors such as new products, market trends, customer preferences, industry disruptions, or internal capabilities may prompt organizations to redefine their strategic focus and pursue new opportunities. It will often require organizations to realign structures, processes, and resources to support the implementation of innovative strategies to achieve the desired outcome. Let's take a look at those external catalysts. These are going to look somewhat familiar if you've been following along with all the videos up to now. We're going to look at political factors, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors that could contribute to change in an organization. In terms of political factors, there could be a shift in government priorities. Take a look at trade deals, for instance, the impact of Brexit, industry subsidies, and green initiatives that the government might be trying to push towards. There could be a change in government, for instance in terms of tax policies for organizations and businesses and tariffs on goods that are imported and exported. There is also the impact of war to consider, and that if a country is in a state of war or participating in a war, there could well be damage to infrastructure, changes of national productivity and what type of productivity, changes in demand for certain products, and also population changes. In terms of the economy, there could be new funding streams available to the business or organization, with new investors or owners wanting to make organizational changes, or business loans and grants that are becoming available. And thinking about business acquisitions where perhaps the organizational business has been purchased by somebody or another business looking to make a change. There's recessions and inflation to think about, where inflation raises the cost of raw materials and resources. having an impact on the minimum wage and the cost of living. Recession leads to less spending from consumers. So how is that going to impact your products and services and who purchases them? And you'll also find that with increased inflation and recession, that banks will increase interest rates to make borrowing more expensive for businesses and consumers. This encourages saving instead of spending in an effort to bring the level of inflation down. And there could well be market competition, and the organization needs to create or introduce new products or enter new markets to continue competing. With social factors, there could well be a change in societal behavior. Things like age demographics, lifestyle preferences, the amount of disposable income available to people, and social media usage can all have an impact. People's shopping trends can change. Changing demand for technology and features, environmental concerns, consumer opinion of different brands can all have an impact. In terms of the changing demand for technology, we could take a look at the use of tablets, and how a few years ago, tablets were very, very popular devices and would sell very quickly, but now that everyone, or a lot of people, have got a tablet, they don't necessarily see the need to upgrade to a new one as often. And that demand for tablets and the availability of new tablets on the market has actually come down somewhat. There are also socio-economic aspects, things like household income, levels of employment, education levels in a country, and also the distribution of wealth that can all impact what people buy and how much they can buy. We can also look at the impact of remote working and what this has had on businesses and organizations. Creating more office space vacancies. There are less people working in city centres, and the impact on other businesses in those city centres because of it. There's a demand for more business technology in the home and virtual collaboration tools. It's also cultural expectations, keeping an eye on different social movements and changing societal standards that people have for the people around them and the businesses and organizations that they interact with. In terms of technological factors, it's about organizations and businesses embracing and taking advantage of emerging technologies. Things like artificial intelligence we've mentioned before, but think about other things like blockchain technologies, the Internet of Things, 5G, fiber optics, and this ubiquity of technology all around us. In terms of innovation and efficiency, improving processes, improving hardware that we work with, and taking advantage of cloud technologies and moving some of our hardware off-site to become the responsibility of someone else. Thinking of artificial intelligence specifically, technologies that use machine learning, natural language processing, object and facial recognition. There can also be a change in payment methods. Let's think about cryptocurrencies, the use of digital wallets, and mobile payments, and payments that use contactless technology, things like Apple Pay and Google Pay becoming much more commonplace. People use cash far less. They're even starting to use things like debit and credit cards far less because all of that information is now built into their smartphones. On the legal side, there could well be new legislation or changes to existing legislation that can have an impact on a business. Businesses and organizations may need to change their policies or practices to be in compliance. When we look at the introduction of GDPR, there was certainly an increase in data security measures in organizations to ensure they were compliant with that legislation. In the UK, there's also the impact of the removal of certain EU legislations. There are additional requirements now in order to export goods to EU countries. There's also the removal of certain subsidies for specific industries and environmental protections that the European Union would grant those areas. And speaking of environment, there could be factors to do with sustainability, such as embracing sustainable practices and more eco-friendly initiatives. Lots of organizations are certainly looking to be more eco-friendly and using more green technologies, as that's one of those societal movements that people are looking for in the brands they pick. Organizations are looking to reduce their carbon footprint. What we mean by this is they're looking to reduce their carbon emissions created directly by the business or indirectly through other suppliers and collaborators they work with. Green energy is a factor, and organizations may be looking at, well, how can we implement green energy in our workflow? Or how can we use more power-efficient technologies that will take advantage of green energy? They could be looking to transition to green energy sources such as solar, wind, hydro, or nuclear power to be more green friendly and have less reliance on fossil fuels. You can also look at the amount of digital waste being created by an organization or business. And there are initiatives and legislation in attempts to reduce e-waste, extending the life of technology, reusing it, or potentially donating it to other businesses so they don't have to buy new. We've also got to look at the impact of the pandemic and the shift in business practices to reduced or no contact working. There was obviously an increase in remote working and that shift in focus to online-based businesses. During the pandemic, there was a notable boost in delivery services. Businesses such as Just Eat, Deliveroo, and Amazon quite clearly had an impact and an increase in their business. And with a pandemic, it can often be sudden. Businesses need to be ready for a quick adoption to that change. Now, if you're a Patreon member, you can take a look at task 2 on the task sheet now. So head back to the task sheet, have a go at the second task. This one I think should take you about 20 minutes. So pause the video here, have a go, and come back, and we'll carry on with part 3. So how do we respond to change? What kind of changes can an organization make to respond to some of these factors? It's going to be rare that an organization changes everything at once. It's usually gradual and piece by piece, looking at certain processes, making changes, making sure they're right before looking at another area of the organization. So do we implement new processes and systems, or do we look at improving them? We could implement or update policies based on new legislation or business standards. Health and safety law is always changing and being amended. The implementation of GDPR required businesses to amend existing policies on data protection, for instance. We could also look at changing business processes. We could integrate new technology into those processes. Or do we offer new or updated products to our customers? NVIDIA are a great example of this. For instance, they were the first to market for dedicated ray tracing and AI technology in their products. Everybody thought that they were investing money in developing a technology that nobody was going to use when they first announced it. But it's become a key part of so many different organizations and businesses now, and NVIDIA are a $3 trillion company as of today. In terms of digital systems, we can enhance operational capabilities and customer interactions. We could look at new opportunities to use data and data analytics. There's an example of this in the NHS in the UK, where they implemented an electronic patient record system. It was a nationwide adoption and transition to this system that started in 2014. Over £2 billion were spent on this change. It took a long time, but now 90% of NHS trusts are all using this electronic patient record system. Now 90% might be a concern. Why is it not everybody? But you need to have an understanding of how the NHS works in the United Kingdom to really understand why that 90% is so successful, and that each trust operates somewhat independently from one another and can all change in different ways. Previously, patient records were all paper-based and stored with local GPs or in warehouses, but they're now accessible anywhere in the NHS that uses the electronic patient record system. It also means that most patients can access their record online at any time. If you want an example of why this is good, well, let's say that you have an accident and wherever you are, you needed to be sent to the nearest accident and emergency room. Rather than people in the organization working on or with you without any knowledge of previous conditions or things that you might be allergic to, medications for instance, they can now look at your record electronically and have all that information immediately. Now, with these changes, with new products and systems, we might need to do a training needs analysis with our staff. And a training needs analysis is essentially all about identifying skill gaps and knowledge deficiencies in staff that work in the business or organization. It informs what staff development the company may need to invest in and how to best support professional development. This could be done for a broad range of skills, or it could be for specific areas such as digital knowledge, policy awareness, organization procedures, and more. And finally, restructuring might be a way that we respond to some of those influences. We could look at restructuring or merging different departments in the business or organization. It might be that we have to reallocate different staff to different areas. We may also look at how we distribute budgets to different departments and different projects. And obviously, with the impact of remote working and the pandemic that we mentioned earlier, we may need to look at repurposing different buildings or office spaces for different uses to become more cost-effective. Okay, now if you're a Patreon member, you can have a look at Task 3. And this is specifically looking at a scenario where we're looking at the impact that Brexit had. So if you're a Patreon member, return to the task sheet and have a go at that third task. This one's going to be slightly longer, not too long though, only about 30 minutes. So pause the video here, have a go at that task, come back and we'll wrap things up looking at what we've learned in this video and also a short exam question. Okay, so we've identified what change management is and why it's needed. We've looked at some potential catalysts and reasons for change in a business or organization. And we've also taken a look at ways that businesses could respond to that change and what they might do. So you should be ready to have a go at this exam-style question. Give 3 reasons why businesses use change management processes. It's 3 marks, so 1 mark for each valid reason that you give. And that brings us to the end of things. In the next video, we're going to be taking a look at proposing change, which is how we kind of come up for the idea of a change we'd like to implement and put it into a structured plan to put forward as a proposal to somebody in order to get it approved and implement. If you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel at T-Level Tactics to be notified of when that video comes out. And of course, take a look at the Patreon to see what's offered on there that's exclusive to our members and get access to the various task sheets that are mentioned in the videos as well. Thanks for watching and see you next time.